Hi everyone, welcome to Simple Concepts. I'm your educator Niyati Par. Guys, this video is the part 2 of mobilization of resources. Under this we are discussing banking. So before we start up with the actual lecture, let me tell you all, अगर आप अपना यूपीएससी सीएससी 2021 का सिलेक्शन अगर आप इंश्योर करना चाहते हैं देन डू टेक द अनअकैडमी प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन. यहाँ पे 4 एपिक बैचेस चल रहे हैं विच आर फॉर 1 फुल ईयर प्रिपरेशन. इसका ऑलरेडी 1 जून से स्टार्ट हो गए हैं, क्लासेस कमेंस हो गए हैं. इसमें आपको बेनिफिट्स ये हैं कि यहाँ पे फुल सिलेबस कवरेज मिलेगा आपको. इंग्लिश जीएस बैच कोर्स है और बाइलिंगुअल जीएस बैच कोर्स भी है जहाँ पे आपको फुल सिलेबस का कवरेज मिलेगा. प्रीलिम्स और मेंस के टेस्ट सीरीज है यहाँ पे अलॉन्ग विद द एनालिसिस. ऑल्सो आपको डेडिकेटेड डाउट क्लियरिंग सेशंस मिलेंगे. ऑल्सो आपको इंटरव्यू प्रिपरेशन के लिए जो एक्सपर्ट्स हैं वहाँ पे अनअकैडमी पे वो आपको सजेस्ट करेंगे बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स. And more to if we can add more to this, then also late night bilingual बैचेस के भी कोर्स हैं और हिंदी के भी कोर्सेज हैं जहाँ पे आपको एक्सपर्ट्स द्वारा आपको मोस्ट ऑफ द चीज़ें आपको बताई जाएंगी. जैसे कि अभी वर्किंग एस्पिरेंट्स होते हैं जो 9 to 5 जॉब करते हैं उनके लिए भी वो सारी फैसिलिटीज़ उनके लिए भी अवेलेबल होंगी जो बाकी लोगों के लिए है. और अगर आप जब अनअकैडमी का प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन लेते हैं, अगर आप हमारा ये कोड अगर यूज़ करें SIMPLEYT, अगर आप ये कोड इस्तेमाल करते हैं बिलिंग करवाते वक्त देन यू कैन गेट 10% ऑफ. ऑल्सो अनअकैडमी पे यूपीएससी चैंपियनशिप चल रहा है वेर इन ऑल इंडिया फ्री मॉक टेस्ट आर गिवन फॉर यूपीएससी सीएससी प्रीलिम्स 2021. और यहाँ पे एक्सपर्ट्स द्वारा जो भी आपके मेंटर्स होंगे वो बहुत बड़े एक्सपर्ट्स हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल राकेश वर्मा सर, मृणाल पटेल सर एंड आतिश माथुर सर जैसे. इफ़ यू एनरोल इट नाउ देन आपको एनरोलमेंट बिल्कुल भी फ्री है. देन डू ज्वाइन अनअकैडमी प्लस. अनअकैडमी पे ज्वाइन कीजिएगा और वहाँ पे प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन ज़रूर लीजिएगा. ऑल्सो गाइज हम जो भी यहाँ पे चैप्टर्स डिस्कस करते हैं, जो भी सिलेबस हम कवर कर रहे हैं, उनके सारे आपको अगर नोट्स चाहिए हो इन द फॉर्म ऑफ PDF देन यू कैन जॉइन आवर टेलीग्राम ग्रुप. द लिंक ऑफ द ग्रुप इज गिवन इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन बिलो. अगर आप फाइंड आउट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं किसी कारण की वजह से, वो लिंक अगर वर्क नहीं हो रहा है देन जस्ट गो टू योर टेलीग्राम अकाउंट. वहाँ पे सर्च बार में अगर आप सिंपल कॉन्सेप्ट्स यूपीएससी के नाम से अगर आप सर्च कर रहे हो देन यू कैन फाइंड आवर ग्रुप ओवर देयर. ओके, सो हैविंग सेड दैट लेट्स स्टार्ट आवर टुडेज लेक्चर. तो गाइज हमारे लास्ट वीडियो में हमने ब्रीफली जाना था कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स के बारे में. इन दिस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो वी विल डिस्कस मोर अबाउट कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स. So cooperative bank is a financial entity, as I had told you all in the previous class, which belongs to its members who are at the same time the owners and the customers of their banks. Okay, वो owners भी होते हैं, वो customers भी होते हैं. So this is Western concept which came in the beginning of 1900s. 1900s में ये शुरू हुआ था. And the initial capital of these banks is contributed by RBI. RBI इनको fully support करती हैं for cooperative banks और initial जो capital investment होती है it is sanctioned through RBI. Also the state and central government भी उनको different राशंस provide करती है. Now cooperative banks operate on principle of no profit and no loss. उनको profit भी, उनका main मकसद objective ही उनका ये होता है. So they are instrumental in dismantling hegemony of money lenders in the rural finances. यानी कि वो इंश्योर करते हैं, जैसे कि साहूकार वगैरह होते हैं ना रूरल एरियाज में, तो उनका वो बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं जो हमारे फार्मर्स या फिर जो BPL वगैरह के जो लोग होते हैं उनको बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं. सो इन ऑर्डर टू अवॉइड दैट वो उनका कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स का ये मेन रीज़न होता है. दैट इज़ वाई दे फंक्शन. नाउ कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स कॉन्स्टिट्यूट अबाउट 80% of the institutional credit in 1960s when nationalization drive was yet to start. But after nationalization they face stiff competition from commercial banks and their share has gone down substantially. Cooperative banks they can be called as scheduled banks or non-scheduled banks. So for example 1960s में क्या हुआ था, nationalization of banks, nationalization drive चला था. सारे के सारे most of the जो बड़े बड़े banks थे उनको सरकार nationalize करने पे तुले हुए थे because the economic condition of the country demanded that itself. But जब ये नेशनलाइजेशन जब शुरू हुआ था तब की बात है जब कॉमर्शियल बैंक्स बहुत ज़्यादा कंपटीशन देने लगी कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स को, और तब वो बहुत ज़्यादा उनको लॉस में जाना पड़ा. सो एज इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट कम्स फ्रॉम आरबीआई एंड गवर्नमेंट, दीज बैंक सफर हाई डिग्री ऑफ आउटसाइड इंटरफियरेंस. तो होता क्या है कि उनका इंडिपेंडेंट फंक्शन ना वो कैरी आउट नहीं कर पाती, क्योंकि उनका सोर्स ऑफ जो इन्वेस्टमेंट ही होता है वो आरबीआई से या फिर बाकी बैंक से या फिर गवर्नमेंट से होता है. तो उनको अपने वाले डिसीजंस यहाँ पे खुद से इंडिपेंडेंट डिसीजंस उनको नहीं लेने को मिलते. सो कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स इन इंडिया आर नॉट कोऑपरेटिव इन स्पिरिट, ऐसा कहा जाता है ना. So there is a need to promote banks in which ownership and management is actually in the hand of people. तो ज़रूरत ये महसूस होती है कि लोग ही उनको उन ऐसे बैंक्स में इन्वेस्ट करें, और जब लोग इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो सर्टनली ओनरशिप भी लोगों के पास ही आती है ना. सो ये मेन मकसद, ये इम्प्रोवाइजेशन करने की ज़रूरत है आजकल के कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स में. Now, this, if supported by policymakers, will lead to mushrooming of cooperative banks in far-flung areas purely on the base of local demand and supply. So it is well known that our rural areas are generally self-sufficient, and it is intervention of outside markets which result in distortions. तो होता क्या है, मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम हमारे जो रूरल एरियाज होते हैं इंडिया के, वो सेल्फ सफिशिएंट होते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वो लोग एग्रीकल्चर उनका मेन फंक्शन होता है, तो वहाँ पे फूड स्कैरसिटी का इशू वहीं पे खत्म हो जाता है. बाकी भी बहुत सारे इश्यूज होते हैं, उनके नीड्स कम होते हैं. सो डेफिनेटली वहाँ पे डिमांड एंड सप्लाई उतना ज्यादा वर्क नहीं कर रहा होता है ना, मतलब करता है बट नॉट एट दैट एक्सटेंट कि आउटसाइड ग्लोबल अगर इकोनॉमिक रिसेशन आता है ग्लोबली तो वो उनको उस हद तक अफेक्ट नहीं कर पाता, बिकॉज वहाँ पे नेचुरली इंडस्ट्रीज वगैरह वहाँ पे नहीं होती. बट वो इतने सेल्फ सफिशिएंट होते हैं कि डे टू डे एक्टिविटीज वो अपने कैरी आउट कर रहे होते हैं. बट प्रॉब्लम कहाँ आता है, जब ये आउटसाइड मार्केट जब इंटरवेन करने लगते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल आप कंसिडर करके देख सकते हो कि अभी इंडस्ट्री एस्टैब्लिश हुई है, तो यूथ जो होंगे वो एग्रीकल्चर के पास ना जाते हुए, एग्रीकल्चर की ओर ना जाते हुए इंडस्ट्रीज में अपने जो स्किल्स हैं वो यूटिलाइज करेंगे. बट जब ग्लोबल रिसेशन आएगा तब नेचुरली उनके जॉब्स लूज हो सकते हैं, या फिर कंपनी वहाँ की, या फिर वो इंडस्ट्री शट डाउन हो सकती है. सो दैट इटसेल्फ मतलब होता क्या है कि उनके स्किल्स जो है ना वो उस इंडस्ट्री के लिए डेवलप हो गए होते हैं. सो दे कैन नॉट यूटिलाइज देयर एनर्जी, या फिर वो अपने आप उनके पास जो रिसोर्सेज होते हैं वो और कहीं पे वो यूटिलाइज नहीं कर पाते. सो नेचुरली जो आउटसाइड मार्केट है वो डे टू डे लाइफ में इस प्रकार से रूरल एरियाज में भी इम्पैक्ट करता है. So there are different types of cooperative banks such as primary agriculture credit societies, which are also called as PACS, states or center land development banks, which are also known as SLDB and CLDB, urban or rural cooperative banks. Now rural cooperative structures under supervision of NABARD or NABARD is bifurcated into short term and long term structure. The short term cooperative structure is in the 3-tier structure with state cooperative banks, that is SCBS, at the apex state level. Now district general cooperative banks or DCBS at the same intermediate district level, and primary agricultural credit societies at the ground or the village level. Okay, so the short term structure caters primarily to the various short medium term production and marketing credit needs for agriculture. All right, here I want to give you one of the important figure that there are currently around 93,000 cooperative banks, and among them huge majority are PACs. Now this collective forms the backbone of the rural banking system in our India. Alright, now let us look into the post office as financial intermediary. So India Post is undoubtedly oldest and largest organization in India involved in resource mobilization. It has huge network of 1.55 lakh post offices, about 2.5 Dak Sevas, that is postmen, and 5 lakh employees. Among these, 90% are operating in rural areas. So with advent of other modes of communication, importance of India Post as foundation of Indian communication network that has severely collapsed. जैसे कि आप देख सकते हो प्रीवियस इरा में, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इवन इन केस ऑफ 1990s, जहाँ पे मोड ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन जो था वो बस पोस्ट ही लेटर्स यूज किया करते थे लोग, एंड बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट से इम्पॉर्टेंट अगर कुछ बताना हो तो ही बस जो फाइनेंशियली जो स्टेबल लोग होते थे वो मोबाइल्स, वो लैंडलाइंस वगैरह यूज किया करते थे. बट नाउ ये हुआ है कि पोस्टल ऑफिसेस लेटर्स के लिए बिल्कुल भी एकदम कोलैप्स हो चुका है. मोस्ट ऑफ द लोग यूज नहीं करते, बस कुछ बैंक्स वगैरह ऐसे जो गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस होते हैं वो ही बस यूज करते हैं. सो दैट इज द रीजन व्हाई इंडियन कम्युनिकेशन नेटवर्क इन द फॉर्म ऑफ पोस्ट ऑफिसेस हैज कोलैप्स्ड. But it remains quite relevant for wide array of financial services. It provides such as savings and other time deposits accounts, public provident fund और PPF जिसको हम कहते हैं, monthly investment schemes, national saving certificate, but it can't be provided into current accounts obviously. So it comes to rescue government when banking system is not able to deliver cash benefits such as NREGA, old age or widow disability pension schemes, etc. So in fact, India Post applied for banking license for few years ago, but RBI deferred this application, saying that India Post should separately consult government, that is the finance ministry, for this purpose. Now it is granted banking license, then 155,000 branches will become bank branches, and India Post will have to adhere to RBI guidelines on CRR or SLR priority sector lending and capital adequacy ratio, etc. So currently India Post only accepts deposit it can lend. So in order to be a bank organization, it will need to be infused with magnificent sums of capital, which is not there currently. But given its deep penetration in rural India, there is a strong case for the full-fledged foray into banking. Now it is said that organization holds around 4 lakhs of deposits and 6 lakhs saving certificates, but these deposits gets interest rate as low as just 4%. Now let us look into the roles and functions of the Reserve Bank of India. So the very first function which comes over here is the monetary function, and the objectives of monetary policy in India have evolved to include maintaining price stability, ensuring adequate flow of credit to productive sectors of economy for supporting economic growth and achieving financial stability. Now the Governor of Reserve Bank announces the monetary policy in April every year for the financial year that ends in the following March. This is followed by the bi-monthly policy reviews in which overall macroeconomic stability is sought to be ensured by tinkering with means such as CRR or SLR and MSF. Now in year 2014, it saw major changes in monetary policy. Earlier there was review every 45 days. It was increased to 60 days, so the impact of changes in policy is clearly visible and it need to be further actions could be properly guarded. Now second function is that regulation and supervision of the banking and non-banking financial institutions. So traditionally, Reserve Bank's regularity and supervisory policy initiatives are aimed at protection of the depositors' interests, orderly development and conduct of banking operation, and liquidity and solvency of banks. Efficiency of RBI's regulation and supervision is attested by the fact that Indian banking system almost remain untouched by recent global banking crisis. Third one is regulation of money. So forex and government securities markets and also certain financial derivatives, it interacts with other institutions like SEBI and FMC and sometimes comes into conflict with them. Now being a banker, the debt and cash management for central and state governments is done by RBI. So the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 requires the central government to entrust the Reserve Bank with all its money, remittance, exchange and banking transactions in India and the management of its public debt. Now, Reserve Bank may also by agreement act as a banker to a state government. Currently, the Reserve Bank of India acts as a banker to all the state governments in India also including the Jammu Kashmir and Sikkim. It has limited agreements for the management of public debt of these two state governments. Other relevant things of such as management of public debt we will be discussing in the following videos, wherein we will discuss the fiscal policy and the government budgeting. Next one is management of foreign exchange reserves. So Reserve Bank, as a custodian of the country's foreign exchange reserves, is vested with responsibility of managing their investment. In recent years, flow of volatility of forex reserves have increased substantially, and this has made RBI to join preserve real value of reserves highly sophisticated. Now guys, the question which comes over here is that where our forex reserves are invested. It is not all kept in lockers. So the Reserve Bank of India Act permits the Reserve Bank to invest the reserves in the following types of instruments. The first one is deposits with bank for international settlements and other central banks. Then deposits with foreign commercial banks, debt instruments representing sovereign or sovereign guaranteed liability of not more than 10 years of residual maturity, other instruments and institutions as approved by Central Board of the Reserve Bank in accordance with the provision of the Act, and certain types of derivatives. So the Reserve Bank's approach to foreign exchange reserves management has also undergone a change until the balance of payment crisis in 1991, wherein मैंने आपको कहा था कि the entire country was about to get the financial emergency. So India's approach to foreign exchange reserves was essentially aimed at maintaining an appropriate import cover. So the committee stressed the need to maintain sufficient reserves to meet all external payment obligations, ensure a reasonable level of confidence in the international community about India's capacity to honor its obligation, and counter speculative tendencies in the market. After the introduction of system of market determined exchange rates in 1993, the objective of smoothing out volatility in the exchange rates assumed importance. It was in this backdrop that Foreign Exchange Management Act was repealing Regulation Act, which was much stringent. Next function is the banker to banks. So the Reserve Banks of India is known as the banker to banks because the banks are required to maintain a portion of their demand and time liabilities as cash reserves with the Reserve Bank, thus necessitating a need for maintaining accounts with the bank. So it also acts as a banker to the last resort. For example, in yearly 2014, United Bank of India was in crisis. Its non-performing assets were around 5% and its capital was depleting. Then RBI intervened with rupees 1000 crore were infused in the UBI with certain conditions. Now, apart from this, RBI also helps in following enabling smooth, swift, and seamless clearing with the settlement of inner bank obligations, then providing an efficient means of funds transfer to banks, then enabling banks to maintain their accounts with the Reserve Bank for statutory reserve requirements and maintenance of transaction balance. Also, it is acting as a lender of the last resort. Okay, now let's go to our next slide. So guys, the next function is oversight of payment and settlement system. So payment and settlement system is instrumental in settling interbank, customer, government and other transaction in an economy. For this, RBI has constantly modernized banking system by computerization, online transfers, new check transfusion system, and now mechanism like real-time gross settlement and NFTs, etc. This has made transfers much reliable and quicker. Speaking about currency management, the management of currency is one of the core central banking function of the Reserve Bank. So along with Government of India, the Reserve Bank is responsible for design, production and overall management of the nation's currency. with the global of ensuring an adequate supply of clean and genuine notes, the printing of rupee 1 and rupee 2 denomination has been discontinued. However, notes in these denomination issued earlier are still valid and in circulation. The Reserve Bank is also authorized to issue notes in denominations of few thousand rupees and 10,000 rupees or any other denomination, but not exceeding 10,000 rupees. Now, the central government has exclusive right to mint all kinds of coins and rupee 1 note. RBI can mint currency of rupees 2 notes and above. So speaking about the Reserve Bank of India entirely in various international fora such as Basel Committee on Banking Supervisions BCBS and the Financial Stability Board FSB, its presence on such bodies has enabled Reserve Bank's action participation in the process of evolving global standards for enhanced regulation and supervision of banks. So apart from RBI is licensing authority for private and foreign banks, it also ensures cooperative governance in banking companies. It guards banks from market risks and guides banks to adopt low risk approaches. Lastly, it has important development role of ensuring financial inclusions. Now speaking about priority sector lending, so the priority sectors refers to those sectors of economy which may not get timely and adequate credit in absence of these special dispensation. Typically, these are small value loans to farmers for agriculture and allied activities, micro and small enterprises, poor people for housing, students for education, and other low income groups and weaker sections. Now the priority sector includes the following categories like agriculture, micro and small enterprises, education, housing, export credit, and of course the others. Now the total target for bank is to lend 40% of their total lending to the priority sector. So out of this 40%, 18% should be in agriculture and 10% should be in the weaker sections. Okay. So speaking about the Deposits Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is also known as DIGC. So as the name suggests, it has two functions. First, we will just brief it up because it is not that important. So first one is deposit insurance, wherein when money is deposited in the bank, there is always market risk. It may be negligible, but there is. So that bank will not be able to repay deposits when due or when demanded. To instill confidence in the depositors about banking system, it is imperative to insure their deposits. So DICGC maintains this deposit insurance fund for this purpose only. And interestingly, premium in these banks for this insurance given by the banks and not by the depositors. So in this case, the DICGC is serving public's depositors' interest. It also it also functions as a credit guarantee. So in the case of DICGC, it aims to cover credit risk of bank. This implies that bank is insured against the bad debts or NPAs going into losses. So for this, it maintains a credit guarantee fund. So these functions initially were under two separate organizations, but later both were merged. It is wholly owned subsidiary of the RBI. So all national financial institutions, if we speak about that, then these are under full control of supervision of RBI. For example, the Exim Bank and the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, or NABARD. So also we have the National Housing Bank, or the NHB, the Small Industries Development Bank of India, which is also known as SIDBI. Okay. So speaking about the non-banking finance companies, or NBFCs, so the non-banking financial companies play an important role in the financial system overall. So NBFC is defined as the company engaged in the business lending, investment in shares and securities, hire purchase, cheat funds, insurance, or collection monies. So depending upon the line of activity, NBFCs are categorized into different types. Recognizing the growth in this sector, initially the regulatory setup primarily focused on deposit taking activity in terms of limits and interest rate. So these companies cannot open current account and issue checkbooks. Speaking about the Bharatiya Mahila Bank, so Bharatiya Mahila Bank Limited is the first of its kind in the banking industry in India, which formed with a vision of economic empowerment for the women, which was not specifically done by any other banks. So this bank received license from RBI in September 2013. So while the bank focuses on entire pyramid of Indian women, special attention is sought to be given to economically neglected, deprived, discriminated, underbanked, then unbanked, rural and urban women to ensure inclusive and sustainable growth. The bank has designed many women-centric products, keeping in mind the core strength of the women so as to enable them to unleash their hidden potentials, engage in economic activities and contribute to the economic growth of the country. So most of the products are offered with concession in the rate of interest this is done specially for the women customers. So for 7 branches, from 7 branches in December 2013, the BMV is now looking to cross 80 this year with new ones in Kochi, Dholpur and other places. So it already has presence in 23 states. The bank is slowly emerging as chief option for women to get credit on easier terms, the commercial banks, etc. So it lends money to women who set up small businesses, beauty parlors, daycare centers and home-based initiatives, and customers get up to rupees 1 crore without credit guarantee. That is, they don't have to keep mortgage or hypothecation, as I had explained in a previous video. So they only have to take an insurance policy under the government's Credit Guarantees Fund Trust Scheme, which is MSME of course, and pay an annual premium. So it is collateral free credit and it is not insured by DICGC but by CGFTS. Now as it is known that at time of independence there was very limited resources of mobilization. Reasons obviously were lack of proper specialized institutions, etc. So with continuous efforts of RBI and Finance Ministry, today there are highly sophisticated and specialized banking system. Here briefly we will see the evolution timeline of various parts of these system. I will just brief it up to you. So in 1962 they had Deposit Insurance Corporation. I repeat, Deposit Insurance Corporation. In 1971 they got with a Credit Guarantee Corporation. Then in 87 they had Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research. In 1995 they have Bharatiya Reserve Bank Note Mudran Private Limited. And then in 2001 they had Clearing Corporation of India Limited. And in 2008 they had नेशनल पेमेंट्स कॉर्पोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया. बीच में भी उनके बहुत सारे ऐसे इवोल्यूशन हुए थे जो कि इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, तो आई डेंट गो फॉर डिटेल एक्सप्लेनेटिंग और फिर नेमिंग देम. So guys, that's all for this particular class. If you like this video then do hit the like button. अगर आप हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पे नए हो then do hit the subscribe button. वहाँ पे नोटिफिकेशन बेल आएगा, उसको भी प्रेस कीजिएगा, and so that you can get notified every time we are on YouTube. So that's all for this particular class guys. We will meet in the next session. Till then, take care and bye bye.